I want to welcome everyone here tonight. You can tell I was a teacher at one time. Just look, do the stare out there, and they get quieter and quieter. Then you don't have to raise your voice. I'm Rita Ferri. I'm the Curator of Collections and Visual Arts Coordinator for the County of Santa Barbara and the County Arts Commission. And tonight's performance is being recorded by CSB TV. That's Channel 20. And I was going to say it'll be available in the future, but they just said, we'll have it ready for you Monday, Rita. So check that channel. And the audience won't be recorded, so if you're on the lam, don't worry about it. It's only going to be the poets and the art, so it's okay. This evening of poetry, titled What Many Are Called, Poets Respond to the Berkus Selection, the Collection Selection, it's long titles, has been organized very cheerfully by Paul Willis. I thank him for that. He is our City Poet Laureate, and the second one to coordinate an exhibition here. David Starkey did one for us, too. This exhibition that you see out there, I hope you have a chance to look at it. Basically, the premise was we have the Berkus collection. It has almost 80 pieces of art, and we have a beautiful catalog. And I taught art education for many years, and I always believed and felt that you don't have to be a curator to look at art and choose what you love. You do have to spend a little time working on it, looking critically, learning about it, listening to artists, but everyone can choose art that they like. So I got suggestions from many people, went out, selected 22 in the community, and they range. We've got poet, we've got a chef, we've got a veterinarian, we've got a prosecutor, we've got a gallery guard. I have a 94-year-old man who is an outsider artist who read the catalog. He has macular degeneration and read it with a giant magnifying glass and chose a piece of art and talked about it. So it's an amazing variety of people. And I never get tired of reading their responses because it says to me many different reasons of why people respond to a certain piece of art, and I always learn something, so it's great. And so tonight we're going to turn those selections over to the poets. And Paul Willis will tell you what he directed the poets to do, too. Paul J. Willis is professor of art at Westmont College, and as you know, the poet laureate for 2011 to 2013. His most recent collections of poetry are Rosing from the Dead in 2009 and Visiting Home in 2008. And with David Starkey, our past poet laureate, he co-edited the anthology In a Fine Frenzy, Poets Respond to Shakespeare. When I asked him for a bio, he gave me like 3 sentences, so I read up a little bit more. So I know that he worked as a mountain guide in the Cascades and the Sierra Nevadas, and he loves to hike and clear brush, and which to me explains why he responded in the exhibition to Macduff Everton's panoramic photograph, View from Wilcox, which you will see. He has a real naturalist's appreciation and sensibility in looking at that piece, and so tonight we'll get to hear his poem and how he responds to that piece. He also told me he's frequently mistaken in the phone book for the local neurologist, Dr. Paul Willis, and often prescribes 3 sonnets a day to any patients who might call. So if you want to call and just get those 3 sonnets, you can bother him a lot. So I'm really honored to have Paul Willis here tonight and appreciate him. Someone said to me, oh, it must be a lot of work doing this. And I said, no, I work with great people like David or Paul. And I call them up and say, I have this idea. And they go, I love that idea. And then they take it and run with it, and they do all the work. So I really appreciate, and I love getting to hear new poets. And we always have a variety of younger poets, older poets, all mixed together. And it's been great. So thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you, Rita. There are 7 of us reading tonight, and I asked each poet to bring 2 poems. One written for the occasion, and asked them to select an image from the exhibit to respond to in a poem. And then I said, also read a second poem that's already been written, either by you yourself or by someone else that you think responds to something in the collection in the same way. So some of us have 2 poems, one written, one selected, focusing on a single image, and some of us have 2 poems, one written for the occasion, one selected, responding to 2 different images. And I gave those images to Rita in alphabetical order, the poets, and that's how she has them lined up, so that's how we're going to proceed today. So our first reader is Kristin George, and Kristin received her BA from Westmont over 2 years ago now, and serves as development director for Sarah House, which is a nonprofit hospice. Her chapbook, We Are Mostly Water, was a finalist in the 2011 New Women's Voices series and is forthcoming from Finishing Line Press in March. She's a member of the local art and writing group Frame and enjoys finding ways to unite the 2 media, such as we're doing tonight. Kristin.
Thank you, Paul, and thanks everyone for coming out tonight. I chose the print Near Amboy, California by Timothy Hearsum, and there it is. And what really attracted me to this print was the desperate longing that I saw in it, and I also did some research on Amboy, which is a ghost town by Route 66, and actually, if you've seen the Pixar movie Cars, is what the ghost town in that movie is based on, apparently, little fact. And yeah, I was mostly interested in imagining who built this little cathedral face and thinking about who did that, what they're waiting for, and what they're hoping for. This first piece is the new piece that I wrote, and it's called Given Water, Given Oil. 7 years we've waited. He says, the Bible says, they will come, are coming. Mother left 2 winters past, said everyone needed to go somewhere before we were dead a long time. We watched her hop into a '69 convertible Cadillac, the color of mustard flowers in March, then drive down Route 66 with her arms flung wide as a cross. Each morning, I drag my heels in sand, tracing narthex to transept. When I reach where the altar should be, I kneel in the noonday dirt and use my hands. I dig until I find the cool underneath, fold my body inside the hollow, and wait for steeple shadow to bury me. At night, I light candles in the furrows and wait for a sign, like the crater nearby, to bring the people back down the road. Father walks the aisles, his hands folded behind his back, while I wait outside the wall of fire. He pauses at the pulpit, his eyes fixed on the road. Then, one night, it rains. One by one, the candles darken. Puddles muddy the nave, the narthex. The furrows fill with water, like hands that are filled after a life of open waiting. Hands that, expecting bread, are given oil instead. Thank you. And this poem I wrote about 6 months ago, and it also communicates that waiting and that longing, though it's set in a different country in America. It's called Water Call. The hearts of my village are buried inside this dirt. We call out to the sky to raise them up in maize or cassava. To fill buckets we set out each night, in case God acknowledges us in patter upon canvas, the warm stretching of an arm into the damp night. The cattle call, the cock cries, and still we wait. Dirt on our children's eyelashes they call fairy dust. The rest of us hardly speak, our voices shucked from the meat that lent its shape. At night, I stand alone in the dirt to feel blood beat inside my feet. I beg God to turn blood into water so I might pour my daughter a cup as cold as the tubers inside the dark earth, who merely swallow their sugars and wait. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kristin. It's Kristin George. If you're standing in the back and would like to take a seat, please make your way forward. There's plenty of seats up here in the middle. Our next reader is Ellen Chavez Kelley. And Ellen grew up in the Old West and was mysteriously transported to the next century to teach poetry in Santa Barbara and tutor writing at Santa Barbara City College. I don't know how that happened. Her most recent book for young readers, My Life as a Chicken, published by Harcourt, was nominated for the 2010 California Young Readers Medal. Ellen's full-length collection of poems, Song for Highway 40, not 66, but 40, will be published in 2012 by Turning Point Press. Welcome, Ellen.
Thanks for coming out to hear the poetry tonight and to enjoy this wonderful, fabulous collection of art. Thanks to those artists. Thanks to Rita, Ferri, and to Paul for including me in this event. So, first of all, I'm going to read a poem by someone else that I selected to read tonight for a couple of reasons. Because the piece I selected for which I composed this poem that I'll read to you in a few minutes, Phoebe Brunner's Vicinity of Wonder, just absolutely engaged me from the moment I saw it. And I'm very interested in poets and writers who honor the idea of place being something that inhabits us, not just that we inhabit a place, but a place inhabits us. I'm very interested in that idea. So I chose a poet that I love, James Wright, and one of his smaller pieces. He wrote a number of little gems while he was in Minnesota. And it so happens that the poem that I composed for this evening, that I'll read to you a little bit later, there's a setting in there, a pond and a marsh, that sort of resonates with this, that was actually in Minnesota as well. So this is James Wright's poem, A Blessing. Just off the highway to Rochester, Minnesota, twilight bounds softly forth on the grass, and the eyes of those two Indian ponies darken with kindness. They have come gladly out of the willows to welcome my friend and me. We step over the barbed wire into the pasture where they have been grazing all day alone. They ripple tensely. They can hardly contain their happiness that we have come. They bow shyly as wet swans. They love each other. There is no loneliness like theirs. At home once more, they begin munching the young tufts of spring in the darkness. I would like to hold the slenderer one in my arms, for she has walked over to me and nuzzled my left hand. She is black and white. Her mane falls wild on her forehead, and the light breeze moves me to caress her long ear that is delicate as the skin over a girl's wrist. Suddenly I realize that if I stepped out of my body, I would break into blossom. That's a goodie, isn't it? I'm going to lift this a little bit, if I can. What a funny little mic. It's soft. It's soft. Anyway, so yes, when I saw Phoebe Brunner's beautiful piece, Vicinity of Wonder, the painting that's up there, of course the colors grab you instantly, and that's a pretty obvious first reaction. But something happened to me that only happened one other time in my life, and it happened in the Musée d'Orsay in Paris, when I had the good fortune to be there and to be standing in the same room a few feet away from a Van Gogh. And what happened to me was that when I saw it, there was such a powerful response in me physically. I heard music and sound. It was beyond the colors. And this happened when I saw Phoebe's painting. So that's why I chose to write to it. And I wanted to open with a quote from a Joy Harjo poem, Forgetting. And Joy Harjo wrote, "All the poems in the world leap to the reason for the first breath." Entry point. Some places never leave you. Imprint, flicker, persist. This is the way of where. Sooner or later, old banks crumble. Someone stops toiling long enough to seek a sun-hammered prairie where an old Buick trims August wind. Summer snowfield where sheep's bell and violet crown Snake River. A high desert, head lit, where sand silvers and silver is a fox that splits the night. Some places never leave you. They hide in the eye of a painter's hand, then meet what you remember. Pond. Purple pools, saw-toothed grasses sing you in, a child rowing for the far shore. Weed-bound, cat-tailed, you pull palm-sized turtles from water shadows, marvel at fin, scale, shell. How furious they swim in your hand, how furious until you free them. Then sky sheds its rain weight, stirs the pond to madness, and you row hard for home, shoulders burning as if you bore a shell on your back. And still you row across pond and marsh of 60 years, now to hold an infant in his first hour, fern-curled in the rushes of your arms. Little turtle, son of your son, oh, some places never leave you. How furious he swims, his parents' dark stream, up, up to first breath, and he is the reason. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Our next reader is Lois Klein, known for her chapbook Naming Water, published in 1998, and her most recent book, A Soldier's Daughter. Excellent, excellent book, published by Turning Point in 2008. Lois is best known in our community for hosting the Favorite Poems Project at the Blue Agave once a month. So if you want to come gather and read some poems, not your own, it's a great place to go. She's a fellow of the South Coast Writers Project, leads private writing groups for adults, also teaches through the California Poets in a Schools program, where she says she is hard-pressed to define for the children what exactly poetry is. She figures if she keeps living the question, one day she will write herself into an answer. Come tell us, Lois.
Thank you, Paul. And thank you all for being here. What a wonderful group of faces. Okay, this is Nell Campbell's photograph, and I hope I'm pronouncing all of this right. Chevy in garage at Teniente Rey Icuba, Havana, 2002. And I picked this particular for so many reasons, which you'll hear in the poem, but one of them is that the first car we ever had in the 50s was a Chevy, and this certainly brought that all back. And this is written in the voice of the Chevy. My 50th birthday, and look at me. Abandoned in this barn at the edge of town, barely on life support. My vacant eyes blind to what's ahead of me. But I remember the past and told it all to Nell, who found me slumbering in the dust of these radiant beams. Told her about my heyday before Honda and Toyota stole my thunder. About the day they drove me to the levee, and the time I trounced a souped-up Buick in a drag race down Main Street. How my owner Pete celebrated at the A&W, flashing my headlights, bragging about my V6's 0 to 60, comparing notes on my transmission, showing off my hot rod hubcaps. And later, how my bench seat made the best place he and his girlfriend could find for their private party, and how my windows steamed up with their pleasure. Now Pete is long gone, my front fender up on blocks, my back end jacked, my innards plucked, and all of me sorely in need of some buffed out turquoise to cover this mottled orange and white. I can't help but wonder, is this garage my sunlit graveyard, or have I been chosen for some dazzling resurrection? This other poem is one that I wrote in June, although I could have written it in July or August or September, and you'll know why in a moment. And it is not particularly about this exhibit, but it certainly is about Santa Barbara and how we all live here. It's called June. Morning came the way it does in June, the sky's clammy hand clamped on ginkgos, oaks, a lone pot of yellow snapdragons, the day's only color. It is hard to live here this time of year. Drizzle slicks the sidewalks. Heavy air hushes the warble of finches, the comforting chatter of jays. Visitors arrive without sweaters, surprised by the season's unseasonable chill. This time of year morning stands gray and ragged outside my window, in the dull woolen dress of a pioneer, needing the sun's warm arms to transform her. I think we finally got it.
That's Lois Klein. Thank you, Lois. Our next poet is David Starkey, who was our third poet laureate, our most recent poet laureate in our community from 2009 to 2010. He is a director of the creative writing program at Santa Barbara City College. His most recent full-length collections of poetry are A Few Things You Should Know About the Weasel and It Must Be Like the World. And I can tell you that David's poems are as good or better than his titles. Come on up, David.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you, Rita. So I have Tony Askew's Did Not. And I'm going to read the poem that I wrote a long time ago that was reminiscent a little bit. This is it's a you know an assemblage out there, and it's just got a lot of stuff. It reminded me a little bit of the furniture stores on Milwaukee Avenue in Chicago. And I wrote this poem, Mueblos por Menos, Furniture for Less, when I was courting my wife from Chicago, who lives in Santa Barbara. And so, I always remember that I'm only here just because I met her. The reason she is off picking up our daughter from dance class, so she's not here to hear this, but she can watch it on TV, so. Mueblos por menos. I sit at the second-story window, Chicago, 2:15 a.m. Down on Milwaukee Avenue, the drunks shuffle home. Across the street, an L train rumbles toward the loop. Iron gates cover the windows of the 100 furniture stores. My love, even their facile come-ons seem like lines from one of the poems I spend all night and day writing you. No money down, easy terms and instant credit. No reasonable offer refused. Thank you. I'm going to walk up here. I may be out of the camera range now, but what I wanted to do is I want to do a human microphone. So if you guys have all been watching Occupy Wall Street, you probably know that there are no electronic devices used to amplify voices. What happens is somebody makes a speech and everybody just repeats back what the person has said. So I'm going to ask you to do that with my poem, Did Not. And you really have to get into it or it's going to get done. So let's start off. Mic check.
Mic check.
Louder.
Louder.
Mic check.
Mic check.
Good.
Good.
Did not.
Did not.
Did play boggle.
Did play boggle.
Did not measure up.
Did not measure up.
Did find a way to organize the bric-a-brac.
Did find a way to organize the bric-a-brac.
Did not issue a list of demands.
Did not issue a list of demands.
Did not satisfy my curiosity.
Did not satisfy my curiosity.
Did not obey the police captain's commands.
Did not obey the police captain's commands.
Did stand with the 99%.
Did stand with the 99%.
Did not dine on pheasant under glass.
Did not dine on pheasant under glass.
Did wonder where in tarnation the country was headed.
Did wonder where in tarnation the country was headed.
Did not cease and desist.
Did not cease and desist.
Did.
Did.
Did not.
Did not.
Did.
Did.
Did not.
Did not.
Did.
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 Did. Did.
Thank you.
I don't know if I did or did not like that. Thank you, David. It's David Starkey. The image I chose is a photo by Macduff Everton called View from Wilcox. And just the perspective is stunning to me. You're on the beach and yet well above it, and the ocean just goes and goes. So it brought to mind a sonnet by Keats, one of his first sonnets, called On First Looking into Chapman's Homer, that he wrote in 1816. This takes a little explanation. Here he is, 20 years old, and he's introduced to Homer's poetry for the first time through translation made by a contemporary of Shakespeare, George Chapman. Of course, the translation that would have been read in Keats' time would be by Alexander Pope from the early mid-18th century. But Keats was astounded by the beauty of Chapman's translation. He sat up all night with his friend and mentor, Cowden Clark, I think was his name. And they read together till dawn, and Keats walked home 2 miles, and Cowden Clark went to bed, and he got up at 10 o'clock to have breakfast, and there on his table was a sonnet that Keats had written about his experience. And he ends with an image of, he says Cortez, he's wrong, it's Balboa, up on the mountains in Central America, Panama, I suppose, and seeing the Pacific for the first time, and how amazed they were to see it. On First Looking into Chapman's Homer by John Keats. Much have I traveled in the realms of gold, and many goodly states and kingdoms seen. Round many western islands have I been, which bards in fealty to Apollo hold. Oft of one wide expanse had I been told that deep-browed Homer ruled as his demesne. Yet did I ever breathe its pure serene, till I heard Chapman speak out loud and bold. Then felt I like some watcher of the skies, when a new planet swims into his ken, or like stout Cortez, when with eagle eyes he stared at the Pacific, and all his men looked at each other with a wild surmise, silent upon a peak in Darien. Byron felt that Keats announced himself as a poet with the final lines of that poem. And I think it's a testament to Macduff Everton's photograph that it brought that poem to mind for me. Well, I did write my own poem. Like David's furniture store poem, which was written for Sandy. I think this is written for my wife Sharon, who had a birthday recently. I didn't quite finish it in time for your birthday. But View from Wilcox, after the photo by Macduff Everton. It's a long way down, but we're safe here on the edge. The surf knows its course across the beach below. The sea knows how to receive the clouds. And even the path of floating kelp finds a way to the horizon. But we're up here, under the dark and sturdy arms of a Monterey cypress on the bluff. Perhaps we're sitting, and already the grass of winter has soaked through to our underwear. Perhaps our feet are dangling over the sandstone scarp. Perhaps you are about to turn when the shutter is snapped. Perhaps you are about to turn in just the way, just now, the whole world is turning to us. Thank you. Our penultimate reader is George Yatchisin. George is the communications coordinator at the Graduate School of Education at UCSB. He's the food editor at the Santa Barbara Independent. He's a DJ at KCSB. You can hear him on the Frank and George show on Mondays from 9 to 11 a.m. And long ago, he was a poet attending the Iowa Writers Workshop. Welcome back to Poetry, George.
Okay. I sort of got the assignment semi-wrong because it's been so long I've done this, I guess, that I have a different, I wrote a poem about this one and then found an old poem about a different work. So there's two different works of art that I'll be responding to. This first one, no, you see, I think the painting and the poem will do its work. The title is Parts of Speech After Battery by Michael Dvorak. I hope that's the right pronunciation of his name. It's a tricky one. I was probably drawn to it for that, too. A painting with nothing but weave up its sleeve, so much so that where the quilted colors fail, as colors must, its black and white turns to bones if you look. Look closer, as you might at any misbehaving century that we let loom before losing its terror to history. Even the blue, almost cerulean, is disturbed to black, cracked from hopeful perfection. Then there's something distant we can't quite see as the frame busting near blots the view. Context is always like that, not something that invites you in to stay a while, as if you would, as if the up close is always personal, as if color is enough for you. Perhaps that's why loom as thing, a noun and stout, hopes to trump loom as action, a verb which tellingly takes no object. What can we hope to bring together beyond the oddness of words like warp, weft, and heddle, not so crafty codes for you, I, us? How much of our lives are an abstract painting where even beauty seems too much to answer for, all we can ask? And then the second painting, or it's kind of a whole kind of thing there. Lawrence Geip's Study Number 4 montage series. This one, just the sort of, it reminded me of something I was like in a history book when I was in grammar school or something that sort of brought together Mount Rushmore and the power of the railroad or something. And then it got me thinking about the railroad, and this is one of the last poems I wrote before I stopped writing poetry for a while. And it's about a person named Phineas Gage. Do people know Phineas Gage? Some people know him. He's famous for having a large spike blown through his head as a railroad worker and survived to tell the tale, and then sort of became this case about what happens to which parts of your lobes and what that does to you. And I didn't realize, I hadn't looked him up in a while, and they actually found photos of Gage. So like here's one of him with his spike that he traveled with everywhere. And even though it happened in Vermont, he was down in South America for a while. He wound up in San Francisco. So somehow I got to Phineas Gage from this. I don't know what Lawrence Geip would think. So this is called For Phineas Gage. Savageries are often luck hard to find. It might be a bewitching moment when magnitude becomes a minted, polished coin. Poor Phineas limps from history, a real man you see, serene if clucking, a foreman scratching out the railroad. One day a spike blew through his head, fast as an amorous tongue in a mouth. Yet he lived, powdered with dynamite, greasy with blood, a monster furloughed past death. How edifying now to see his skull and that spike side by side at Harvard. Witnesses who say many weddings are connivances, although few sting like that of steel and brain, no doubt. Please allow me my whiff of deceit. Gage's smudged days aren't numerals in a problem of fate I hope to solve, I know. But the manifestos are spray-painted on walls I don't have time to piss on, and the dog catcher is threateningly quick. Thanks.
It's George Yatchisin. Thank you, George. Our last poet this evening is Chryss Yost, who's recently married to George, you should know. Chryss is the author of several chapbooks of poetry. La Jolla Boys is one I seem to recall. Also active as an editor of poetry. You can find her book Poetry Daily, A Year of Poems, and she's included in the outstanding anthology California Poetry from the Gold Rush to the Present. She currently works at the UCSB Library, and for the last 8 years has been the managing editor of the Journal of Haitian Studies. She's also very proud to report that she and George had 250 visitors on Halloween, and they worked for that. You need to see their yard. Come on up, Chryss.
We had a lot of fun. I chose this work because it seemed so playful to me from across the hall. And then I got closer. I said, oh, this is kind of playful and kind of grotesque. So I liked it even more. It's the way it's hung is actually in two different frames. They look connected here, but I think they're actually completely separate. So you've got the appetite and then the object, you know, and they're not even in really the same universe as things hang. But anyway, I thought how much that said about our appetites and our ambitions. And so this is also going to get you 2 sonnets into your daily dose of sonnets now with Paul's. So you all will be beaming with health by the time you leave. Hunger, after Keith Puccinelli's. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Okay. A is for aardvark, insatiable snout, cludge of rump, counterweight to want. Proboscis, probing the bitter out. The aardvark is appetite for ant. The quick tickle going down. Each tail-weighted shuffle, drudging over ant-caked mud. The ribs spring, like steepled fingers. What next? The ants. Then ants. Always doing, never done. Hunger hunts with thready tongue, spiraling and snailed in the throat. The aardvark marches one by one. Next. I also chose this, so we didn't even coordinate this, but we're nicely framing this out for you guys. This was such an incredible metaphor of a work. I mean, it's like everything in the world is in this picture to me. And in this collection, it was really, really difficult to choose 2 things to respond to. And I'm sure a lot of people in this room had that experience, that every single collection. So I would like to acknowledge the Berkuses for putting this collection together and donating it to the city. It's really a gift. So I did not want to close with my own poem. I'd like to close with something by Rilke. I am much too alone in this world, yet not alone. I am much too alone in this world, yet not alone enough to truly consecrate the hour. I am much too small in this world, yet not small enough to be to you just object and thing, dark and smart. I want my free will and want it accompanying the path which leads to action, and want during times that beg questions, where something is up, to be among those in the know, or else be alone. I want to mirror your image to its fullest perfection, never be too blind or too old to uphold your weighty, wavering reflection. I want to unfold. Nowhere I wish to stay crooked, bent, for there I would be dishonest, untrue. I want my conscience to be true before you. Want to describe myself like a picture I observed for a long time, one close up, like a new word I learned and embraced, like the everyday jug, like my mother's face, like a ship that carried me along through the deadliest storm. Thank you.
It's Chryss Yost. Thank you all for coming. I want to recognize again Kristin and Ellen and Lois and David and George and Chryss and yours truly. Thanks for coming. Go in peace.
I'd like to make one last announcement. If all of the poets would email Paul, he will send you my email address. And if you, with your graciousness, if you would send me a copy of your poem, and if anyone would like a particular copy of a poem, just email me and then I'll forward it out to people. I got lots of requests when David had his organized reading here, and you find people leave and they think about the poems and then they think, I want a copy of that. So we'll make it easy for you, and look for it on Channel 20 on Monday. Thank you so much for coming. And also, if you saw Keith Puccinelli's artwork up there, I just want to announce he has an opening at Atkinson Gallery, Santa Barbara City College, tomorrow night, 5 to 7. So you will see more wonderfully weird art. So thank you for coming. Bye-bye.